In this video, we'll be taking a look at three basic things. One will be to understand scale factors when objects are bigger than a 1-to-1 scale. And another is to look at blocks like these pieces of furniture that are in this drawing. And then the initial setup of taking all of these settings and creating a template file. So let's get started. When you think about working with AutoCAD, everything is drawn at full scale. So if you draw a small object, it's drawn at that scale. And so is this floor plan. So this floor plan is drawn so that this line right here is actually 23 feet. And that's why it's so big compared to this little sheet of paper here on the left side. So this rectangle on the left side represents an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper drawn at exactly 8.5 by 11. But you see the floor plan won't fit. So what we do, instead of shrinking everything down to fit inside this small sheet of paper, we draw everything at full scale, and then we increase the scale of our dimensions, our text, our title block, and our line type scale. And those are the type of things that we're going to be taking a look at. Now, what is the number that you use? Well, I mean, you can use any number really to visually make it appear correct so that you can print it and view it. But there is a chart here that you can use to stay on track with using scale factors. If you went online and you looked at and did a search for scale factors, you'd find several of these, but this one right here kind of shows all of them, and I'll post this online also. So if you look at, there's an architectural scale, engineering, metric, and if I get a little closer here, you'll see that when you're using an architectural scale of 1/4 of an inch equals a foot, the guidelines for this is the scale factor would be 48. And that just means that all of these things that we just talked about are going to be 48 times the size. So that when we print it, we can print it at 1/4 of an inch per foot, and it'll print correctly at that scaled drawing, or that scale that we're determining. So in this handout, I've shown you here that in order to change the line type scale, so this hidden line, which at first is going to appear completely solid with the AutoCAD defaults, we need to type in LT scale at the command line and then use 48 as the scale factor to increase it 48 times the size. We're going to be doing these type of things as we develop this drawing. Also with text, you take the plotted text height. So let's say you want your text to be plotted 1/8 of an inch high, like the height of the text, and you multiply it by the scale factor, which would be 48, and you end up with 6-inch text. And 6 inches seems about right to be next to a wall that's full scale. And some companies have actually determined and created charts for the text height also. Dimensions we'll look at, you can type in D to access the dimension style dialog box, pick the modify button, or create your own dimension style. Go to the fit tab and change the overall scale to the scale factor, right? For this one, 48. So instead of individually changing the arrows and the text and everything else about the dimension, you only need to change the overall scale of the dimension so that all of that is increased to the correct size. And then for the border, which is what we're going to start with, you can take this small sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11, and use the scale command to scale it up 48 times the size so that you have here the sheet of paper and you can start drawing within it. Okay, once we get to these type of topics, we'll come back and go through them so that you can get that experience. We'll start a brand new drawing. I'm going to pick this little plus sign here to start a brand new drawing, but you can come up here and click on new drawing, or you can use the sheet of paper right there and the quick access toolbar right there, or when you first start AutoCAD, you do have this drawing 1 that you can use and save it as a file. So I'll start a brand new drawing. I always turn my grid off so you can go to the bottom right corner and click on here this icon. We have talked about some of these tools already, but I'll try to include it in this video. We want to save the file because right now we're just using the AutoCAD default file for the template. So let's go up here and go to save. You can either save it here in the drop down, or you can pick the little floppy disk icon right there. When you save this file, make sure that you pick the appropriate folder, and then down here where it says file name, just name it whatever the assignment is, floor plan. And then pick save. So now that we saved the drawing, let's go ahead and create some layers. We can pick layer properties, pick the new layer icon. I'll go a little bit quicker with this because we already did this in some of the other videos. But you know, we're going to need to have a layer for the walls, so type in walls and press enter twice. We'll need one for the door and one called dim text, which is what we're going to put the dimensions and the text on, and one more called I'll call it hidden line, but it would probably indicate something like the soffit above, or it could just be hidden line, whatever your layer standards are. And so these could be the layers that we use, just like a door, dim text, hidden line, and walls. We do need one more, that's right. We need one for the border in this detail. So the border or the title block there, I'm going to show you a scale factor and how to use that. Go ahead and change the color of some of these. You probably are using a black background, so you probably want to use brighter colors just to stay on track with that. I'm going to use some darker colors to work with because I'm using the white background for your convenience to be able to view it. Okay, the walls layer needs to be bolder. So there are a couple of ways of doing that. I'm going to make it easier and change the line weight here. I'm going to go ahead and click on default. And for the line weight, for the walls layer, I'm going to change that to 0.60 millimeters. You can also use color for line weight, but that's a different topic. Right now we're just going to change here that specific layer line weight to 0.6. And then for the hidden line layer, we're going to click on continuous for line type and then pick load, highlight or scroll down and pick hidden, and then pick OK. And now we have to highlight hidden in order to use it for that layer. So I did that kind of quickly because we've already been there, but there it is, setting up your layers. We're going to start with the border layer, so I'm going to double click on a little sheet of paper right to the left of the layer border. And what that does is it brings it up here and makes it current. Now, I'd like to draw now a sheet of paper, show you what it looks like as a really small sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11. So I'm going to use the rectangle command, which is up here in the draw panel. The border layer is current. I'll start the rectangle command, and I'd like the rectangle to start at 0, 0. So I'm just going to go ahead and type in 0, 0 and enter. You see what it does is it starts right down there at 0, 0, which is by default the XY origin right there. And now for the other corner, I'm going to type in the X, Y. So I'll type in 8.5, 11 and enter. Now that's my sheet of paper, 8.5 by 11. And one way to verify it is to use this very cool new tool called Quick. Now this is only in 2021. So when you click on Quick and you go into your drawing, just by putting your pointer over your objects, you can kind of see what the dimensions are. There's 8.5 by 11. Now if you don't have this version, you have an older one, you can always use distance. Distance here underneath the ruler there, or you can type in DIST. You can click 2 points here and find out the distance between those points. If I don't click the second point, I can pull it down here and see that this is 11 and this is 8.5. I'll use my escape key to get rid of that. Okay, so now before we start to use the scale command, another thing we'll need to do that's very important is we need to change our units. Did you notice that when we use this Quick tool, we can see 11.0000. That's the default. It's decimal, and it's 4 places to the right. Now, if we type in the word units, UNITS, and enter, we can change our drawing units under length type from decimal to architectural, and then pick OK. Now, when we go back and use the quick measure or the distance, you'll see that the difference is that now we can see inches. We can see 8.5 inches and 11 inches. And so that really affects how you input information and how you see it in the command line and in the screen. So now we'll be able to type in feet when we start to draw our floor plan. Okay, we know this is 8.5 by 11. Let's use the scale command to scale it up 48 times the size. So the scale command is here, and by modify, I'll select scale. It says to select the object. I'm going to go ahead and select this rectangle and enter it. You can enter on the keyboard or right click as an enter. Specify base point. So this is going to be the point at which everything is going to scale from. So I'm going to go ahead and pick the bottom left corner. And you see, you can already see just by pulling your mouse here that it's starting to change the size, but it says in your command line scale factor. I'm going to type in 48 and enter. Now you can see that it's very big. If you double click on the wheel of your mouse or you type in Z, enter, E, enter. That would be zoom extents. I'm going to roll the wheel back. We said before that if you don't have the wheel of your mouse, you can use the navigation tools that are normally over here. I'm going to go ahead and turn those back on. In case they get turned off here for you, we can go to View, and under View you can see here that there is a navigation bar, and this also controls the view cube and other things that are on. So now I can see my navigation bar. I'll go back to the Home tab just to make sure that we're here for other things. But there's my navigation bar. In case you don't have a wheel of on your mouse, you can use these full navigation wheel or some of these other view tools. Going back to measure this now using quick, you can see that because it was increased 48 times the size, it's actually 34 feet by 44 feet. And this is where we can start to draw that full scale, actual scale plan. We're working with floor plan. I'm going to bring that drawing back here and minimize AutoCAD so that we can get started. So to make this quick, we're going to use a polyline to draw our walls and then offset the polyline so that all the corners are cleaned up. First thing we need to do is change the layer, right? So we are going to change our layer here in the layer drop down. We'll click right on the word walls. Now that we're in the architectural feet and inches, we can type in the apostrophe for feet. Let's start with this 14 foot 11.5 inches at the bottom, and we'll work around this drawing. So I'm going to start the polyline command here. If I click a point somewhere in my drawing, I can always move it later. That's the last point that I'm going to pick. I'm going to make sure that the polar tracking is on. By default it is. I'm just going to pull my mouse to the right and type in, this is where we want to type in 14 apostrophe, no space, right, 11.5. We don't need the space, we don't need the inches. So it's just 14 apostrophe 11.5. If you didn't know that that decimal was 0.5, you could type in then the dash 1/2, like for the 1/2. So let's go ahead and press enter. And then you pull your mouse straight up and you type in 23 apostrophe, which is right next to the enter key, and enter. And then pull your mouse to the left and type in 17 apostrophe 11.5 and enter. Pull your mouse straight down and type in, it looks like 15 feet, and enter. Then to the right, we're going 3 feet, 3 apostrophe, enter. And then back to the beginning, we can pick close in the command line, or you can type in C for close, either way. Now we're ready to offset. we can start the offset command here in the modify panel, type in 4 and enter, because in the command line it's asking me to specify the offset distance. And now it's asking me to select the object to offset, which is this polygon, and then which side do we want it to be offset. So because those were inside dimensions, I'm going to pull my mouse way out and click so that I have my 4-inch wall. Now those are all one piece, and we could continue with them as all one piece just by using tracking to draw these 2 lines and trim it out. But I think it's a good idea to get used to using offset and to know that you can explode polylines. So up here, right underneath the erase icon, and you can also type it in, we can use the explode command. Start the explode command, select these 2 polylines, and enter. You'll know it's exploded if when you go close to it, you can see that just that line is highlighted. Now we can use the offset command to offset this inside line down 4 feet and then another 3 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and start the offset command, type in 4 apostrophe and enter. Select here that inside small line and then select here below it. Now instead of going back to the offset command, they did add for us this continuation of it. We can just select that new line that we just created, pull your mouse straight down and type in 3 feet or 3 apostrophe and enter. And now we have our 3-foot offset. I'll use my escape key to get out of that. Now, before we trim this, I would like to show you a different way that you could draw these lines. Instead of using offset, we started to talk about tracking. If I start the line command and I just rest my pointer here at the corner, I can pull my mouse straight down and type in 4 feet and enter. You see what it does? It tracks me to the beginning of that line, and then I could pull my mouse over to the other side and click. I'm going to go ahead and escape out of that. I just wanted to show you that tracking is an option, because now I could start the line command and rest my pointer here at the new line and track down 3 feet and then click on the other side of the wall. If you want to try that out, it's a pretty nice option. So we'll need to trim this now. We talked about that a little bit. The trim tool is right next to erase there. We'll go ahead and start that. Like I said, if you have 2021, you'll be able to trim right away. If you have anything older, when you start the trim command, you have to press enter to accept the idea that everything becomes a cutting edge. And when you click on an object, it's going to trim back to the first existing object that it intersects. So I'm going to go ahead and select here all of these lines that I don't need to trim that out. Okay, and then enter or escape out of that. I'm ready now to draw my door. I'm going to now change my layer to door. So drop this layer down, click right on the word door. And now we know that the door is 3 feet. So I'm just going to use a regular line, start the line command, click on the inside opening right there, pull your mouse to the right, type in 3 apostrophe, enter, and then just go ahead and enter again. Now, I would like to mention that if this was not on the right layer, we could just select it, go to the layer drop down, drop these layers down, and pick which layer you want it to go on. You see how it's changing its color just because I would have moved it to the correct layer, but it is on the correct layer, so I'll use my escape key to get back out of that. Now we need an arc for the door swing, and there are several different arcs. I used to use start, end, radius, but I think start, end, direction, it makes it easier for us. Start, end, direction. So start, end, direction means we're going to click a point at the start of the arc, we're going to click a point at the end of the arc, and then we're going to decide the direction of the arc. So I'm going to pull my mouse over here. Depending on which side you clicked first, just pull your mouse out here until you see the arc the way you want it, and then click. So now let's take a look at dimensions, and this is where we start to get into the dimension scale. We're going to be placing dimensions, so we'll make the dim text layer current right there. Now I'm going to place one without changing the scale factor, and you'll see how small it is. So we'll go up to linear, as we've been using, and I'll click on the two inside corners. I'm going to click there, the inside corner of this room, and here's another inside corner. I'm going to pull my mouse up and click, and look, it's really small, right? In fact, you can scroll up to it and see it's still decimal, and there's a little arrow. So to change that, we're going to type in D and enter to get to the Dimension Style Manager. If you want to change the standard style, you can modify it, or you can create a new one. If you create a new one, you can call it whatever the scale factor is or whatever the job name is, and it actually starts with the standard style and then continues to modify the improvements to the new style. But for this drawing, I'm just going to go ahead and pick modify, and in the fit tab right here it says use overall scale of. We haven't gotten to layouts quite yet, but we will later on in this course. We're going to change the overall scale right here to 48. But since we're here, we need to change it to the architectural settings. I'm going to post a file that has screenshots of each one of these tabs, but we'll go ahead and change the basics right here for this project. So in the primary units tab, we're going to change the unit format to architectural. And down at the bottom where it says 0 suppression, most of the time we don't want to suppress the inches. So I'm going to go ahead and take the check mark out of inches. Like, we want to see 15 foot 0 inches, but we don't want to see 0 inches or 0 feet 4 inches. So we'll keep the check mark in feet and we'll take it out of 0 inches. We already looked at the fit tab, although there are several things in here that I might change depending on the project. In the text tab, this is up to you, but the text height, the default text height is actually 1/8 of an inch equals a foot for most basic drafting. So we can change that. You could change the text style, but we'll just keep it as the default. Text placement vertical, let's change that to above. So instead of putting the text right in the center of the dimension line, you can see in the preview we're going to put it above. And we want to click in front of aligned with dimension line so that your dimensions, the text rotates and aligns itself with the dimension line. This is all based on what your industry standards are. For architectural drawings, we want to align it with the dimension line. And then it's up to you if you want to change the arrowheads and the symbols and arrows. This will be the only project that will use tick marks. We'll change the arrowhead first right here to architectural tick, and then you might change the scale of it depending on what you like. The arrow size I'm going to change to 1/8 inch. And I'm going to go over to the lines tab, because now that we're using tick marks, we have access to extend beyond ticks right there. And this has to do with the lines and how far they go beyond the tick mark at that corner. So I'll make that 1/8 inch and take a look at what that looks like. Extend beyond ticks, 1/8 inch there. And that would be for the dimension lines. But now for the extension lines, we'll do the same thing. Extend beyond dimension lines, we'll bring that back to 1/8 inch. Okay, the alternate units would be if you'd like to work with decimal tolerances, have to do with tolerances and working with limits. So we won't need any of that for this drawing. We can go ahead and pick OK and close. And you should see your dimension now, 17 feet 11 and a half. And we're ready to put the other dimensions. You can go back to linear. Instead of clicking the two corners, if you look at your command line, it says or select objects. Well, select objects is in brackets. So when you start linear, if you just press enter to accept select objects, you can click on that inside wall right there, and AutoCAD automatically pick up the ends of that line. Now, you could even pull your mouse out and type in how far you want this dimension line. Most of the time we just click to visually place it. So again, you can right click to repeat dim linear or go back up to the icon. You can then enter or right click to get to the point where it says select objects to dimension. I'll select this inside line, pull my mouse out and click. We can really actually use that same concept for the 4 feet. So I can repeat dim linear, press enter, select this line. Now, but this time when we're lining it up, we want to go over to the arrowhead or this tick mark and select it so that we know that it's right on. Don't try to like guess or fudge it here. You already have an existing dimension. Go ahead and snap to it. Now for this door, I'm going to go back to linear and click on the 2 sides of the door opening. Click, and then pull my mouse up here and click on the existing dimension. Down here, same thing. For the 3-foot dimension, I'm going to click on the inside corner here. On the inside corner here, pull your mouse down here and click. But for the 14-foot dimension, I could repeat the dim linear, enter, and select that line. Then come down and click on the existing dimension. Let's not forget about the 4-foot or 4-inch dimension here. We'll pick linear and select the 2 corners here, the inside and the outside corner, pull our mouse down and click. I did notice here that when I created the 4-foot dimension and used this line, it put this extension line over this line. We talked about using grips on the dimensions to pull the dimension lines away. So select the 4.0 and then click inside and let go. Click and let go inside of this this grip and bring it back to this corner and click. Use your escape keys. You can see that you need to have that little gap. And in fact, here's another one. For that same 4-foot, I need to bring it back. So it's probably better to click the 2 corners. So using grips, you can pull those extension lines back so that you can have that little gap between them. Alright, so that would be for scale factors setting up for dimensions. We also have a line type scale for this line. I'm using it to show up above that there's some transition in the ceiling. So here I want to make sure that the layer hidden line is current. So drop your layers down and click on hidden line. And then I'll go ahead and draw it a line without changing the scale factor. So I started the line command. I'm going to click here at this corner, pull my mouse over and click and enter. And you can see here that there is a really small hidden line, but the scale factor isn't appropriate and it won't print. It'll print solid. So we type in LT scale and we just try the LT scale that would be suggested on the chart. If we type in 48 and enter, what's also unique about AutoCAD is that you can type in whatever number you'd like. So unless your company has a standard set scale that says you have to use 48 for 1/4 of an inch per foot, you could make that number 40, 42, whatever makes it look right for your hidden line. And then for the text, we want to change our layer over to dim text. And we'll go to multi-line text like we did before. And you can see it's going to be really small, but I'll show you how to change it while you're placing it. So start the multi-line text, click a point, and then stop and look at your command line. One of the options is height. So you can click on the word height or type in H for height and enter. And now it's asking you here in your command line, specify height. Well, we said that we might use 6 inches. So I'm going to just type in 6 and enter. You don't have to type in inches ever, really. I'm going to now pull my mouse over here to click and finish the text box. And with your cap locks on, you can go ahead and type in the name of this assignment. I'm going to highlight assignment 14 floor plan and pick U for underline. Now this is another way of changing your height. If you placed your text and it was really small, you can come back and highlight the text. I'm just going to make the title a little bit bigger. So I'm going to highlight this text, and up at the top left, you see that little 6 inches right there? I'm just going to click right on 6 inches, and maybe I'll type in 10 for 10 inches and enter. Boom, big. So I'm going to put that back to maybe 8 there. So maybe 8 inches is bigger, and it's up to you what size it is. Sometimes we use a bigger text for the title. Okay, and now I can click out in space, and I've got my title. Now let's take a look at a quick start to using blocks by bringing in some of these pieces of furniture and blocks that are already in AutoCAD. I will be creating a separate video specifically about blocks because it's a pretty big topic if you want to understand the whole world of it. So in this video, we want to bring in some furniture. If you hold your control key down and press the number 2, it brings up the Design Center. In the Design Center, we do have a sample folder, and you'll see on the left-hand side that the sample folder is highlighted. If for some reason you get out of that folder system, you can always use this little house icon at the top. And what that does is when you click on that little home icon, it brings you back to sample right there on the bottom. And so in the sample folder there, you can scroll over and down and find ENUS. This is the default location for the Design Center files. So you'll see there that you have a sample folder, ENUS, and then Design Center. And underneath the Design Center folder, you have all of these different files that come with AutoCAD that have blocks inside of them. So this is an existing drawing that has blocks inside that drawing. So if you are looking for blocks that are inside this home space planner, you can pick the little plus sign there and highlight blocks, and here they all are. I'm going to close out of these bottom panels, which really just help us to see the details, the preview, and the details. See what these two icons up here, the description, preview and description. I'm just going to close these out. The first thing you'll need to do is to make the layer current that you want this furniture to go on. And we didn't create a layer for that, so let's do that. We'll go ahead and click on Layer Properties, pick the new layer icon, type in Furniture, change the layer color. You can see that if you have a layer highlighted, you pick up those same settings. And then the rest should be what we need. Continuous line type and furniture. Make that current by double clicking on the little sheet of paper to the left of furniture and close out of that dialog box. So now the furniture layer is current, because with the furniture layer current, we can hold our left mouse button down on a piece of furniture and drag and drop it into our drawing, out of this Design Center and into our drawing. So for this example, in this project, you don't have to use the same furniture that I did. You go ahead and create whatever drawing you'd like with these blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and hold my left mouse button down and drag my mouse here out so that I can pick up these pieces. Now that's the home space planner with all of these. Notice here that if you were networked in a company with everybody else in the same network system, you would be able to navigate over to their file and borrow all of these things. And this is the part of the coordination. There are other files in here that you can use, like a house designer that has these blocks, like a tub and a sink and a toilet. If you scroll down, you'll see complete kitchen setups with some things. Mostly you want to look for the things that are in plan when you're working with a floor plan, so you wouldn't put the front face of this microwave in there. So yeah. And then also landscaping, some blocks here like trees and plant and a swimming pool. So these are blocks that are inside the Design Center, and you can use these blocks that are inside the files, fasteners and hydraulics, all of these different pipe fittings files, to drag, drag those blocks into your drawing. I'll go ahead and close out the Design Center, and then one way to move them into your drawing is to select them and use these grips. We started to talk about using grips, but here you can use the grips to click inside and move the object, or you can click inside the grip and then making it red or like a base point, and then right click and use all of these commands like move, rotate, scale, mirror. Mostly rotate and mirror. So if I use rotate here, I can dynamically pull my mouse around to the angle that I need, or I can type it in on the command line. So if I want this to come over here and rotate, I can click. If I want it to mirror, I can click inside this grip, right click and pick mirror, and you see that I can pull my mouse down and click, and now the whole thing is mirrored to the other side. So you have options to here use this these grips to create your floor plan. So you go ahead and bring in whatever 1 or 2, 5 or 6 different objects to work with. What you want to try to avoid is you want to try to avoid exploding these blocks, because it's all one piece. It's a little bit easier to work with. And you could explode it, but then it would go back into individual pieces. One way to modify that block is to double click on it. When you double click on it and you pick OK, you would be inside the editor. So you're inside the block editor. You can make changes to that block. Maybe I want to take out this wood grain and then save it. When you pick save the changes, any block that's that name that's inside this file will update, but it won't affect the original block, the original file that you got it from. So you see now the table doesn't have the grain in it, and it maintains its block so that it's all one piece. So now you have everything set up in a drawing file. You've got all the layers, you've got the units set up, you've got the dimension styles the way you like it, and you want to create it as a template. Instead of creating a new template and trying to dump all that in it, you can save it. Make sure you save it first. And then you can go to Save As and change here the file extension or file of type to AutoCAD Drawing Template. That way it goes into the template folder, and you can call it maybe a company name like GM template for a company template, or it could be based on the scale factor. And when you pick save, I'll go ahead and replace the one I already had. You'll have a chance to tell it like a description and pick OK. And now you're inside the template file. This is the DWT file. And because you're inside the template file, I'll just go back. I can open up the floor plan file and see that I have both. I have the floor plan file and I have the GM template file. So the GM template file that I'm inside right now, I can either leave my blocks there, leave my text and just change it for the next file, or I can just delete everything, because I know that the next time I start a brand new drawing, I can use this as a template, and it already is set up with layers, units, dimension styles, maybe text styles, and everything else that you might want to put in this file. So I'm going to go ahead and save it and show you this process. I'm starting a brand new drawing. When I start a brand new drawing, it brings me to the template files. A brand new drawing can use the GM template. So I'll double click on GM template.dwt. By default, it's the AutoCAD DWT. That's the one that's blank that we actually started with. So here's the GM template DWT that we created. Double click on it. And now we're starting a brand new drawing with already layers set up and units and everything in there. Notice that it's not saved yet. It's still a drawing file. So we'd have to go up here and save it and give it a name and put it in a different folder, whatever folder you'd need to use. So I just wanted to show you that that's one way of creating a template file that you can use for new projects. It can include all all of those settings, and then you could even add more. You can actually open up a template file. So let's say I want to go to open, and I'm going to change my files of type to DWT. So I might want to open up one of these template files and make changes to it because my new project has some other setting that needs to be different. Okay, so we're back at creating this floor plan, which was bigger than a 1-to-1 scale. We looked at scale factors, we looked at layers, and working a little bit with blocks that are inside a file from the Design Center. Remember, the Design Center could be holding your control key down and pressing the number 2 there. And then we looked at finishing up by creating a template file.